When my son Derek told me I'd be more comfortable sleeping in the converted garage because you're just taking up space we need for the nursery. Mom, he had no idea he was speaking to Margaret Elizabeth Donnelly-Walsh, former executive director of commercial real estate development at Boston Properties, whose $4.2 billion commercial property empire included the very shopping center where his automotive repair business operated under a lease agreement that I had personally negotiated and approved, whose private real estate holdings encompassed over 1,400 residential properties throughout Massachusetts and New Hampshire, including the $680,000 Framingham colonial, where he lived with his pregnant wife, believing he owned it through his own mortgage payments, and whose real estate investment authority position had quietly ensured that the ambitious 32-year-old mechanic, who assumed his elderly mother was just another fixed-income widow living on Social Security, never bothered to question why his business loan applications were always approved within days instead of months, why his property taxes remained mysteriously affordable despite rising neighborhood assessments, or why legal documents from Premier Property Management LLC and New England Investment Holdings were regularly delivered to a woman he considered too old to understand modern real estate markets, realizing that the simple retired lady he had relegated to sleeping next to lawnmowers and paint cans was actually the owner of his $127 million personal property portfolio and the institutional real estate authority, who had been quietly ensuring that ungrateful family members enjoyed suburban ownership, while treating the elderly woman, whose financial expertise created their opportunities, like an unwanted burden taking up valuable square footage in the three-bedroom house that she actually owned through a complex trust structure he had never bothered to investigate. Before we dive into this incredible story of family entitlement meeting real estate authority and the property empire my ungrateful son never knew existed, make sure to hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me about your worst experience with family members who treated you like you were worthless while secretly depending on your and subscribe, so you never miss stories like this one about what happens when entitled relatives assume elderly family members are helpless dependents, only to discover just how catastrophically wrong they can be when family dismissal meets the kind of institutional property control that could transform their comfortable suburban lifestyle into a harsh lesson about gratitude and the true meaning of respecting your elder. My name is Margaret Elizabeth Donnelly-Walsh. I'm 73 years old, and this story begins on November 15, 2024, when I returned from my monthly board meeting with the Massachusetts Real Estate Investment Council in downtown Boston to discover that my son Derek had made what he considered a practical housing decision that would reveal his true character and teach him the most expensive lesson about dismissing elderly relatives, whose quiet real estate expertise had been ensuring that promising young families maintained suburban homeownership, seamless business finance, and the kind of anonymous property backing that determined whether ambitious automotive entrepreneurs could afford middle-class Framingham addresses or spend their evenings calculating rent payments that could destroy their carefully constructed repair business and comfortable family lifestyle. To understand how my son Derek Michael Walsh, a 32-year-old automotive repair shop owner running Walsh's Auto Service with 8 full-time employees, 4 part-time mechanics, and $427,000 in annual revenue, while living in a property whose mortgage, insurance, property tax, and major maintenance I had been coordinating through my private real estate network for 7 years, ended up watching his comfortable middle-class lifestyle disappear through legitimate property ownership protocols within 72 hours of moving his elderly mother into a freezing garage. You know who I was before my carefully maintained image as a simple retired widow, living on a modest pension, concealed the real estate expertise and institutional property authority that had elevated me from junior property management assistant in 1983 to executive director of commercial real estate development at Boston Properties, a position that required overseeing $8.3 billion in annual property transactions and creating the institutional real estate networks that determined housing accessibility for over 2,800 middle-class families throughout the greater Boston area, New Hampshire Seacoast region, and Massachusetts suburban communities. For 38 extraordinary years I was Margaret Walsh, dedicated institutional real estate professional at one of New England's most prestigious commercial property development firms, starting as an entry-level rental coordination assistant, when property management was still handled through paper filing systems and handwritten lease agreements, stored in metal filing cabinets, advancing through every level of real estate responsibility until my strategic retirement in 2021 as executive director with authorization over family property coordination, multi-generational housing planning, and institutional ownership systems that most people never understand or appreciate during their comfortable assumptions about suburban homeownership and property market accessibility. My career had encompassed every aspect of commercial and residential real estate development, from basic rental administration and tenant coordination to complex multi-generational property planning that determined whether promising families maintained their suburban homes across decades of market volatility, whether young professionals received appropriate financing support for business ventures that required property backing, and whether the next generation of successful families achieved the property ownership and institutional real estate relationships that distinguished lasting prosperity from temporary automotive business success and suburban lifestyle speculation that could disappear during economic uncertainty. The scope of my real estate responsibilities had grown to encompass managing comprehensive property portfolios for 1,647 families across 6 New England states, coordinating with federal housing authorities who required accurate documentation for regulatory compliance and fair housing protocol, implementing sophisticated financing systems that balanced individual family needs with institutional accountability requirements, designing property assistance programs that synchronized seamlessly between private investors, federal agencies, and regional development firms, and troubleshoot complex ownership complications that could affect everything from individual family homeownership success to multi-generational property development that influenced suburban housing markets and family financial stability throughout the New England real estate community and beyond into national property development networks. During my 4 decades of distinguished real estate service, I had personally overseen property coordination for over $23.7 billion in family housing projects throughout New England and the Mid-Atlantic regions, supervised direct coordination between 1,506 different financial institutions across 4 states, collaborated extensively with federal housing officials who required accurate regional data for compliance analysis and regulatory oversight, and managed emergency financing support protocols during market volatility that required immediate coordination between banking institutions, regulatory agencies, and private property development firms to ensure family housing stability while maintaining institutional integrity and privacy protections that balanced property access with financing optimization and regulatory compliance requirements throughout the most challenging housing market periods in modern American real estate history. The transformation that I had witnessed and managed during my career was extraordinary, from manual property documentation systems stored in traditional filing cabinets to sophisticated encrypted digital platforms that could instantly verify financing eligibility, property ownership status, rental histories, and housing availability across institutional networks that connected individual family property support to national real estate development systems operating throughout the United States, Canada, and selected international property markets. I had been personally responsible for training over 287 real estate professionals in property management administration protocols, regulatory compliance procedures, and financing coordination techniques that required both advanced real estate expertise and deep understanding of family dynamic federal housing regulations and property privacy protections that distinguished legitimate real estate development from speculative investment schemes that could destabilize regional housing markets. My position as executive director meant that I possessed what was essentially master-level access to the New England Regional Property Development Network, the ability to classify financing eligibility, coordinate multi-institution property distribution, implement emergency housing support protocols, and evaluate family conduct that could instantly transform someone's housing status from guaranteed financing access to comprehensive property review, requiring extensive character evaluation and regulatory compliance verification to complete through financial channels and documentation processes that could take months or years to resolve satisfactorily through traditional real estate administration and family housing coordination systems. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my real estate career was my role in developing and implementing the automated property administration protocols that determined how institutional financing flowed between private property portfolios, commercial development system, regulatory verification networks, and family housing coordination throughout the greater Boston metropolitan area and New England region. I had personally written financing specifications that guided property development for dozens of Massachusetts' most successful middle-class families, established coordination procedures between property managers and regulatory authorities, and created evaluation protocols that ensured consistent, appropriate property distribution across real estate programs that served both individual family housing needs and community development excellence requirements throughout suburban Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Vermont property market. The institutional real estate infrastructure that I had helped design and implement served as the model for New England property development, with real estate institutions in other states consulting our protocols for guidance on family housing coordination, property wealth management, and compliance implementation that balanced homeowner expectations with regulatory optimization throughout the most complex property planning scenarios. My expertise had been featured in real estate industry publications, including New England Real Estate Journal, Property Development Quarter, and the Journal of Commercial Real Estate Management, consulted by property development firms throughout the region who wanted to implement similar housing administration systems and automated protocols that served both individual family needs and multi-generational property monitoring requirements. Derek's comfortable life in his suburban Framingham colonial, which he considered evidence of his automotive business success and strategic financial planning, was actually supported by the kind of seamless property coordination and institutional real estate administration that I had been creating and maintaining throughout my entire career. The perfect financing coordination that ensured his mortgage payments remained manageable despite rising interest rates throughout the smooth regulatory approvals that had helped him during his business expansion transition 2 years ago, when he added his fourth service bay and purchased diagnostic equipment, and the comprehensive property support that enabled his garage renovation projects and home improvement investments, and the real estate coordination that provided optimal tax assessment rates and insurance premiums that saved his family over $400 annually, all depended on the kind of sophisticated institutional property management and private real estate administration that required exactly the expertise I had been developing for over 4 decades of distinguished professional service. The Walsh family home where Derek lived, conducted his weekend automotive projects, represented not just impressive Massachusetts suburban real estate, it was a testament to the sophisticated property planning and real estate coordination that had elevated our family from working-class origins in South Boston to middle-class homeownership status over the course of my professional career and strategic property acquisition planning. The beautifully maintained 2,400-square-foot colonial house, featuring original 1987 hardwood floors, completely updated kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, 3 full bathrooms with modern fixtures, and professionally landscaped grounds, spanning 0.7 acres of pristine Framingham neighborhood property, reflected the kind of institutional real estate support and strategic property management that enabled families to transition from apartment living, rental dependency to suburban homeownership within exclusive communities that required both financial credentials and stable employment positioning. The home's location in the prestigious Knobscot section of Framingham, where property values averaged zeros in, and neighborhood residents included small business owners, municipal employees, and established Massachusetts families whose property ownership extended back multiple generations, represented the culmination of strategic property planning that began when I first established our family real estate investment structures in the property itself had been acquired through a complex financing arrangement that involved coordinated lending from 3 different regional banking institutions, optimized tax planning through property trust vehicle, and regulatory compliance with Massachusetts housing planning statutes that required extensive legal documentation and ongoing administrative oversight throughout the property ownership and development process. Derek's automotive repair business, Walsh's Auto Service, operated from a 200-square-foot commercial facility in the Framingham Commerce Center, which had been strategically selected and leased through my professional real estate network at below-market rates that saved his business operation over $2,000. His business model focused on foreign automotive repair, specializing in European vehicles, particularly BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagen models that served Framingham's most affluent suburban residents with service capabilities ranging from routine maintenance and diagnostic work to complex engine rebuilds and transmission replacements that required sophisticated equipment and specialized technical expertise. The success of Walsh's Auto Service reflected not only Derek's automotive training from Massachusetts Bay Community College and his ASE certification achievement, but also the comprehensive business backing and institutional support that had been carefully orchestrated through my commercial real estate relationships over multiple years. His ability to secure commercial property financing at preferential rates, navigate complex zoning approval processes for automotive service operations, and maintain the substantial equipment financing required for diagnostic computers, hydraulic lift, and specialized tools, all depended on the kind of institutional credibility and real estate relationships that I had cultivated throughout my downtown Boston career at Boston Property. Derek's lifestyle reflected the financial freedom and social positioning that distinguished successful Massachusetts small business owners from those who struggled with commercial lease payments and regulatory complications. His collection of personal vehicles, including a 221 Ford F-150 Super Crew for business use, a 200 Honda Civic Si that he had modified for weekend racing, and his wife Jennifer's 2022 Subaru, and in automotive assets that most auto repair shop owners couldn't afford without compromising their business financing capabilities or accumulating personal debt that could affect their commercial credibility and banking relationships with equipment financing companies. The monthly expenses associated with maintaining the Walsh family lifestyle, including the home's property taxes exceeding $8,200 annually, insurance premiums for both residential and commercial properties, household utilities and maintenance, private healthcare premiums for Derek's family and his employees, and membership fees at the local Framingham Country Club, where Derek networked with potential commercial customers, created financial obligations that exceed $800 monthly and required the kind of consistent cash flow and credit access that most automotive repair business owners found challenging to maintain during economic uncertainty or seasonal business fluctuations that could affect automotive service demand. But what Derek completely failed to understand was that his comfortable middle-class lifestyle, business success, and suburban social positioning weren't the natural result of superior automotive repair capabilities or exceptional business management acumen. They were the direct result of institutional real estate support and property coordination that I had been orchestrating through my professional network and private real estate relationships throughout his entire adult life and business development experience. The seamless financing experiences that he considered evidence of his business expertise were actually carefully coordinated support systems that required sophisticated institutional relationships and continuous coordination between multiple real estate organizations and regulatory agencies throughout Massachusetts and New Hampshire. The Walsh Family Property Trust, which I had established during the early years of my career at Boston Property, operated with real estate assets valued at $47.3 million, dedicated to supporting promising family members who demonstrated both professional potential and character integrity that aligned with our family's values of hard work, community contribution, and respectful treatment of all family members regardless of age or circumstances. The Trust's mission statement emphasized the importance of creating opportunities for younger generations to focus on their professional development and family responsibilities rather than property acquisition struggles, enabling the next generation of successful Walsh family members to develop the stability and prosperity necessary for community leadership and authentic family excellence throughout Massachusetts' suburban community. The beneficiary selection process that had identified Derek as a trust recipient 9 years earlier had been based on his automotive education, small business development potential, and character assessment evaluations that measured his commitment to family values and community contribution throughout the Framingham area. The comprehensive evaluation that qualified him for institutional real estate support included recommendations from professional colleagues at the automotive repair facility, where he had worked as an employee before starting his own business, community service documentation from his volunteer work with youth automotive education programs, and personal statements that demonstrated his understanding of family responsibility and his commitment to maintaining the Walsh family tradition of professional excellence and community leadership. But perhaps most importantly, the trust's beneficiary requirements included ongoing character assessment and demonstration of values that aligned with the trust's mission of creating family members who understood both property responsibility and family respect. The real estate coordinating agreement that Derek had signed, though he had never fully understood the true source of his property advantages, included specific provisions about maintaining character standards and demonstrating respect for family relationships and elderly family members that distinguished response beneficiaries from those who prioritized personal advancement over family loyalty and traditional values that honored generational wisdom and experience. The trust's monitoring protocols included annual reviews of beneficiary professional progress, character development assessment, and evaluation of how trust recipients treated family relationships and elderly family members throughout their business development and personal life management. Comprehensive evaluation process that determined continued real estate eligibility wasn't limited to business achievement. It included assessment of whether beneficiaries maintained the kind of character and values that justified continued investment in their property maintenance and professional development support throughout their business ownership experience. Derek's automotive repair business success and Massachusetts suburban positioning had always met the trust's professional standards, but the character assessment component of his beneficiary status had never been formally tested because family relationships and elderly respect hadn't been challenged during his intensive business development focus over the past 7 years. The trust's protocols included specific provisions, character review when beneficiaries demonstrated behavior that conflicted with the values of family service and elderly respect that the trust considered essential for ethical real estate eligibility, and continued property support throughout family property ownership and business development coordination. The irony of being dismissed as a space-consuming burden by the family members whose suburban lifestyle depended entirely on the real estate coordination and institutional property support that I had been orchestrating and protecting throughout their homeownership experience was lost on me during that cold November evening. The systematic dismissal that I had experienced during family gatherings and holiday celebrations over the past 2 years represented exactly the kind of character evidence that justified implementing comprehensive real estate review protocols and eligibility reconsideration that could transform expected support into accountability assessment and character evaluation requirements that would fundamentally alter their comfortable assumptions about property ownership and business financing accessibility. My modest 2-bedroom apartment in nearby Natick, which Derek and Jennifer had visited occasionally during family gatherings and considered evidence of my limited financial circumstances and modest retirement lifestyle, actually served as the primary coordination center for Donnelly-Walsh Property Holdings operations throughout central Massachusetts and southern New Hampshire. The simple furnishings and traditional decor that they observed during their infrequent visits concealed sophisticated real estate management systems, encrypted internet connections, and institutional property development infrastructure that maintained direct connectivity with real estate administrators at 37 property management institutions, and enabled immediate response to beneficiary emergencies or character assessment requirements that could affect property eligibility and housing security throughout Massachusetts' most desirable suburban communities and Hampshire's fastest-growing residential development areas. The home office that appeared to casual visitors as a simple retirement workspace with basic computer equipment actually contained specialized real estate database systems and institutional property management hardware that provided direct access to New England Regional Property Network emergency housing protocols for family support during market crises, and secure connections to federal housing databases that required the highest levels of security clearance and professional authentication to access and maintain throughout the private real estate development community institutional property management networks that coordinated housing throughout 6 New England states. The daily routine that Derek and Jennifer occasionally observed during family visits, which they interpreted as simple retirement activities and limited social engagement typical of elderly widows, actually included coordinating institutional real estate operations that affected over 847 families throughout Massachusetts and New Hampshire, supervising emergency response protocols for property crises that could disrupt housing stability throughout multiple jurisdictions, and provide administrative consultation for federal housing officials who relied on accurate regional data for compliance analysis and regulatory coordination that influenced property development policy throughout the northeastern United States and beyond into national housing development planning initiatives. November 15th had begun as what appeared to be routine coordination of family weekend plans and traditional family obligations that should have been easily managed through basic family consideration and elderly inclusion responsibility that honored both practical housing needs and family relationship maintenance. My weekend visit to the Framingham Colonial had been a regular family tradition for over 6 years, with consistent scheduling that included confirmed participation and family activity coordination that represented standard family protocol and basic elderly inclusion, rather than unusual burden or exceptional demand on family members who had benefited from decades of property support and real estate coordination that enabled their comfortable suburban lifestyle and business ownership opportunity. The housing coordination that Jennifer had been managing included extensive preparation for their first child, expected in February 2025, with nursery planning that utilized the home's third bedroom and required furniture arrangements, safety installation, and space optimization that accommodated their growing family's practical needs. The weekend planning that she typically coordinated included comprehensive space utilization for the family members who lived in the colonial home, and consideration for the guest accommodation. Included my regular family visits throughout the past 6 years of consistent family relationship maintenance and elderly inclusion protocols. But what made Derek's systematic space appropriation particularly devastating was his comfortable assumption that elderly relatives should accommodate younger families' convenience through independent housing arrangements, rather than expecting family inclusion during property planning decisions that affected housing arrangements and family relationship maintenance. The casual language that he used to dismiss my accommodation needs, "Your J's taking up space we need for the nursery," revealed months of strategic thinking about family space management that prioritized convenient nursery preparation over elderly accommodation and family tradition maintenance that had characterized our family relationships for decades. That followed his announcement revealed Derek's complete competence about family relationship management and his systematic approach to elderly accommodation minimization that treated my living space as complications requiring independent resolution, rather than family responsibilities deserve immediate attention and priority consideration throughout the property planning and family housing coordination process. The comfortable dismissal that he employed demonstrated months of strategic calculation about family loyalty optimization and business advancement that justified appropriate elderly living space during important family expansion planning and business development that required additional space for equipment storage and customer meeting areas. Sometimes the most expensive mistake you can make is assuming that institutional real estate coordination and private property management are automatic entitlements that continue regardless of how the beneficiaries treat the elderly relatives whose expertise created their opportunities for suburban homeownership and business property access. The garage accommodation that Derek created for my housing would become the documented evidence of character priorities that justified redirecting property ownership and institutional financing to serve more deserving families who understood the value of both real estate support and the elderly wisdom that created opportunities for meaningful property ownership and authentic family contribution in suburban communities that required both professional excellence and character integrity to access and maintain successfully throughout Massachusetts' competitive real estate market and New Hampshire's rapidly developing residential communities. What my family never understood during all those years of treating me like a simple retired widow who needed help with basic smartphone features and online property searches was that their comfortable assumption about my limited technological capabilities revealed their complete ignorance of the institutional real estate empire I had built throughout the New England property development community, an empire that operated so seamlessly and efficiently that its very invisibility had become its greatest strength and my family's most dangerous vulnerability when it came to their continued housing security and business property access. The modest Natick apartment where I had lived for 8 years, which Derek and Jennifer considered evidence of my limited financial success and outdated lifestyle choices, actually served as the primary coordination center for the New England Regional Property Development Network, equipped with quantum-encrypted communication systems, dedicated fiber-optic internet connections, providing 10 gigabit symmetrical speeds, and institutional real estate management infrastructure that maintained 24/7 connectivity with property development institutions throughout 28 states and enabled immediate response to market emergencies that could affect billions of dollars in family housing wealth and institutional property coordination activities across multiple time zones and regulatory jurisdictions. My living room, which appeared to casual visitors as a simple retirement space with traditional furniture, family photographs from Derek's childhood, and modest decorative elements that suggested limited financial resources, contained sophisticated real estate database systems and institutional property management hardware that provided direct access to the primary servers at Boston Property backup communication protocols for emergency housing coordination during market volatility, and secure connections to federal housing databases that required the highest levels of security clearance and professional authentication to access and maintain throughout the global property development community and international real estate coordination network. The technology setup that I had installed throughout my apartment represented over $1.8 million in specialized equipment and software licensing that enabled me to coordinate institutional real estate activities across 6 New England states, respond to family housing emergencies within minutes rather than the typical days or weeks required through traditional property management channels, and maintain the private real estate infrastructure that supported dozens of Massachusetts families' most important housing management goals throughout Worcester County, Middlesex County, and selected premium residential areas in New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Vermont. The multiple holographic displays that lined my home office walls showed real-time status information from property databases across 28 states, automated alert systems that notified me of regulatory changes or compliance issues requiring immediate attention, and coordination interfaces that allowed me to communicate instantly with property professionals, federal housing officials, and real estate administrators throughout the regional property development network. But beyond the physical infrastructure that supported my institutional real estate coordination responsibility, what made my home-based operations particularly powerful was the comprehensive network of professional relationships and federal coordination protocols that I had developed throughout my 38-year career in property development and institutional real estate administration. The daily video conferences that my family occasionally overheard during their visits weren't social conversations with retired colleagues discussing grandchildren and retirement activities. They were strategic consultations with federal housing administrators about regional development policy, crisis coordination with regulatory development officials during market emergencies, and technical support for property development institutions that processed billions of dollars in daily housing distribution throughout North America and selected international markets. The Donnelly Institute for Property Excellence, which I had established during the final years of my career at Boston Properties, had become the most respected private real estate training program in New England, providing advanced education for institutional property coordinator, federal compliance officials, and private housing professionals who needed expertise in multi-institution property integration, regulatory protocol implementation, and crisis response coordination that maintained family housing stability during market emergencies and institutional real estate complications that could affect thousands of families simultaneously across multiple states and property development jurisdictions. Our institute accepted only 8 participants annually, through an application process more competitive than federal housing agency positions, requiring extensive experience in property development, institutional real estate administration, or family housing coordination before candidates qualified for consideration through our rigorous screening process. The program fee reflected both the specialized nature of our training and the career advancement opportunities that graduation provided for property professionals seeking leadership positions in federal agencies, institutional real estate administration, or private housing organizations throughout New England and the broader northeastern property development region. The waiting list for admission to the Donnelly Institute extended over 4 years, with applications from senior property development professionals at major real estate firms throughout Boston, Worcester, Springfield, and Hartford, federal housing officials seeking advanced institutional property training that wasn't available through traditional government education programs, and housing administrators responsible for regulatory coordination and compliance oversight throughout multiple international jurisdictions and cross-border property development initiatives. We regularly declined applications from Wall Street real estate investment executives who lacked the specialized knowledge of family housing systems and federal regulatory compliance that distinguished our program from general real estate education and basic property development training that focused on profit maximization rather than community housing stability. What made our program unique wasn't just the technical training quality, it was the federal coordination experience and professional networking opportunities that came with graduation from the most respected institutional property program in North American real estate administration. Donnelly Institute graduates received automatic consideration for federal housing positions that never advertised openings publicly, gained access to our network of private property professionals and federal regulatory officials throughout New England and beyond, and could leverage our consultation services to build careers in institutional real estate management that would be impossible to achieve through traditional university education and standard property development advancement that didn't include the sophisticated regulatory knowledge and federal coordination expert that our program provided. The advanced curriculum that we provided included hands-on training in federal housing integration protocols that synchronized local property development with national housing policy, emergency response coordination during private real estate market crises that could affect thousands of families, multi-institution property coordination that enabled seamless housing transitions across state boundaries, family housing database management that protected privacy while maintaining regulatory compliance implementation that protected family property rights while maintaining housing access, and federal monitoring capabilities that balanced individual rights with community housing stability requirements. Our graduates managed private housing databases for federal agencies throughout New England, coordinated institutional property operations for major metropolitan areas, including Boston, Worcester, Providence, and Hartford, and supervised housing coordination operations for real estate institutions that handled trillions of dollars in annual family property assets throughout the northeastern United States, and selected international property development markets that required sophisticated regulatory coordination and federal compliance oversight. But perhaps the most significant aspect of the Donnelly Institute was our role in developing and implementing the next generation of private property protocols that would determine how institutional real estate was managed, secured, and coordinated between private property organizations and federal housing databases throughout the 21st century. The graduates from our program were leading technical innovation at organizations like the Federal Housing Administration, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the American Property Development Association, and major institutional real estate systems, implementing compliance protocols for federal agencies, and coordinating private property management for state housing systems throughout the United States, and selected international housing programs that required sophisticated regulatory coordination. The professional relationships that had developed through our institute included direct connections with senior executives at every major property development firm throughout New England, federal housing officials responsible for regional institutional real estate coordination throughout the northeastern United States, and private property professionals who managed housing systems for federal governments, regulatory agencies, and institutional property development departments throughout North America, Europe, and selected emerging market property programs that required advanced regulatory coordination and federal compliance oversight capabilities. My daily routine, which my family observed during their infrequent visits, and considered evidence of simple retirement activities and limited social engagement, typical of elderly widows living on fixed income, actually included coordinating institutional real estate operations that affected over 4.7 million private property records throughout New England and the broader northeastern region, supervising emergency response protocols for market failures that could disrupt family housing throughout multiple states and international property market, and providing technical consultation for federal officials who relied on accurate regional data for regulatory analysis and private property allocation coordination that influenced national housing policy development. The morning schedule that began each day at 4:45 a.m. included reviewing overnight system alerts from property databases across 28 states, analyzing automated error reports that identified potential compliance issues or housing coordination integrity problems requiring immediate attention, coordinating with federal housing databases that synchronized with our regional systems during off-peak hours to maintain optimal performance, and implementing system updates that maintained compliance protocols and improved database performance for millions of family property records and institutional real estate transactions that processed continuously throughout the northeastern property development network. The afternoon coordination activities included supervising housing integration between private property exchanges and federal agencies throughout New England, troubleshooting system errors that affected institutional real estate allocation visibility, and family housing application processing that could delay housing assistance for families in need, coordinating with federal officials who needed accurate regional data for policy analysis, and private property coordination that influenced national housing development initiatives, and managing crisis response protocols during market volatility that required immediate coordination between multiple federal agencies and private institutional property organizations throughout the regional development network. The evening consultation work included providing technical guidance for private property professionals who encountered housing errors or system integration problems that could affect family housing access, and coordinating with international firms that implemented our protocols for institutional property management systems in other countries throughout Europe and Asia-Pacific region, and conducting strategic planning with federal officials who relied on our expertise for national housing database modernization and compliance enhancement initiatives that would improve housing access and regulatory efficiency throughout the United States and selected international markets. But beyond the technical coordination responsibilities that occupied most of my daily schedule throughout the week, what made my institutional real estate expertise particularly valuable was my comprehensive understanding of how private property systems affected individual families and communities throughout New England, the Mid-Atlantic region, and selected areas of the southeastern United States where our coordination protocols had been implemented successfully. Every family who received timely private housing distributions, every homeowner who operated efficiently within regulatory framework, every housing grant that reached appropriate recipients, and every emergency housing response that coordinated effectively, represented the successful implementation of systems and protocols that I had spent decades developing, refining, and maintaining through continuous professional development and regulatory coordination. The Boston Properties where I had spent my entire career wasn't just a regional institutional property contractor, it was the exclusive provider of coordination services for the Federal Housing Administration's New England Regional Integration Network, coordinating family institutional real estate funding for over 1,000 ISHN, unwanted and federal housing jurisdictions, 107 major metropolitan housing areas, and managing property integration with 267 different private real estate exchanges across 12 states throughout the northeastern and mid-Atlantic region. Our systems processed over $118.7 billion in annual institutional property transactions, coordinated family housing development for over 900 different firms and housing organizations, and maintained the infrastructure that enabled platforms like Federal Housing Administration private family property trusts and institutional real estate networks to provide effective private housing management and family property coordination for thousands of New England and Mid-Atlantic families seeking stable housing solutions. The scope of our institutional property management operations required coordination with the Department of Housing and Urban Development for private housing compliance and audit support throughout the regional network, the Federal Housing Administration for institutional property program integration that ensured seamless coordination between federal and private housing initiatives, the Internal Revenue Service for family property program compliance verification that protected both individual privacy rights and federal oversight requirements, the Securities and Exchange Commission for real estate coordination and regulatory oversight that maintained market stability, and a Department of Homeland Security for family housing verification and security monitoring that supported both individual privacy protection and national security requirements throughout the regional property development network. My security clearance level required annual background investigations conducted by federal security agencies, comprehensive financial audits that verified the integrity of my property management operation, psychological evaluations that confirmed my continued reliability and professional competence, and professional competency assessments that ensured only the most qualified and trustworthy institutional property professionals maintained access to systems that could affect national housing program, regional family stability, and federal private property policy development that influenced housing access for millions of American families throughout multiple states and jurisdictions. The clearance process included polygraph examinations conducted by federal security professionals, extensive interviews with professional colleagues and federal officials who could verify my character and professional competence, continuous monitoring that verified my continued reliability and commitment to maintaining the highest standards of professional integrity and systems security throughout my ongoing coordination responsibility. The technical innovations that I had developed during my career included automated integration protocols that synchronized private property data between institutional real estate databases and federal housing systems throughout the regional network, compliance algorithms that protected family privacy while maintaining institutional property accessibility and regulatory oversight, error detection systems that identified housing irregularities before they affected family property access or housing stability, and crisis response protocols that maintained system stability during equipment failures or cybersecurity incidents that could affect millions of family property records and trillions of dollars in institutional real estate activity. These innovations had been adopted by property development firms throughout New England and the broader northeastern region, implemented by federal agencies for National Housing Database Modernization Initiative, and licensed to international institutional property organizations that wanted to implement similar integration systems and compliance protocols for family housing management in European Union countries, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Pacific Rim nations, seeking to modernize their housing systems and improve coordination between government agencies and private institutional property organizations that served millions of families seeking stable housing solutions. The consulting contracts that I had negotiated with federal agencies included ongoing technical support for housing database modernization projects that would improve efficiency and reduce emergencies, response coordination during system failures that affected multiple states and could disrupt housing access for thousands of family, compliance assessment and enhancement for federal private property databases that ensured regulatory requirements were met while protecting individual privacy rights, and strategic planning for next-generation institutional property technology that would improve system integration and reduce housing management costs while maintaining accuracy and security standards that protected both individual family privacy and federal housing monitoring capabilities throughout the National Property Development Network. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my institutional administration authority was my role in determining which families received priority processing and optimal housing visibility throughout the New England Regional Family Private Property Network that served thousands of families seeking stable housing solutions. The integration protocols that I had designed included automated quality assessment algorithms that evaluated institutional property applications for appropriateness and completeness, determined housing positioning based on family need and character status that balanced individual requirements with community housing stability, and implemented enhanced allocation protocols for families who met the highest standards for community impact and character potential that contributed to neighborhood stability and property value maintenance. This meant that families associated with my personal relatives had always received the most favorable institutional property treatment possible throughout their housing experience, priority processing for housing coordination that reduced waiting times from months to days, enhanced distribution visibility that attracted maximum financial benefit and optimal lending terms, expedited application coordination that reduced approval timeframes and eliminated common administrative delay, and automated compliance verification that prevented administrative problems from affecting their private property access or housing status throughout their homeownership experience. The seamless housing experiences that Derek and Jennifer had always enjoyed weren't natural consequences of automotive business excellence or superior financial management. They were the direct result of institutional property preferences and technical advantages that I had been providing through my coordination authority and system access throughout their entire homeownership and business development experience. Derek's comfortable life in his Framingham colonial had benefited from perfect institutional property services coordination that ensured optimal financing terms, seamless private housing processing that eliminated common delays and complications, and enhanced property allocation that attracted maximum investment support and regulatory advantage, because I had personally implemented distribution protocols that ensured optimal housing visibility and financial accuracy throughout his property ownership experience. The smooth regulatory approval processes that had helped him during his transition from apartment rental to homeownership 7 years ago had benefited from expedited verification and automated compliance checking that reduced approval timeframes and prevented common administrative delays that affected most institutional property applications throughout the Massachusetts housing market. The comprehensive private property services that enabled his Massachusetts suburban lifestyle reflected housing coordination that I had maintained between institutional property systems and federal housing databases, preventing the service gaps and administrative complications that could have significantly affected his access to housing development and property support throughout his business ownership experience. The excellent property rates that supported his lifestyle maintenance, the emergency institutional property programs that provided additional support during business fluctuations, and the private housing infrastructure that supported his family homeownership, all depended
on institutional property coordination and housing management that required exactly the kind of technical expertise and federal coordination that I had been providing throughout my entire career at Boston Properties. Derek Michael Walsh presented himself to his professional colleagues and Framingham neighbors as a self-made Massachusetts success story, the ambitious son of a retired property professional who had earned his way into suburban homeownership through automotive business excellence and financial responsibility that demonstrated his commitment to community stability and family prosperity. His carefully constructed narrative of individual achievement and personal property management reflected the kind of bootstrap mythology that resonated with his business colleagues and suburban neighbors who admired his apparent financial independence and family stability that seemed to demonstrate the American dream of property ownership through hard work and business success. The story that Derek told about his homeownership journey emphasized his professional achievements at Walsh's Auto Service, where he had advanced from employee mechanic to business owner, while maintaining consistently high customer satisfaction ratings and contributing to Massachusetts automotive service excellence through innovative repair techniques and customer service that distinguished his business from competitors throughout the Framingham area. His property purchase had been celebrated by colleagues and friends as evidence of his exceptional career advancement and dedication to family financial excellence that demonstrated his commitment to community stability and property ownership responsibility. During his homeownership experience, Derek had distinguished himself through property improvements that earned recognition from neighborhood associations throughout the Nobscot section of Framingham, community involvement that demonstrated his commitment to local development and civic responsibility, and financial management that positioned his family as models of Massachusetts suburban success that inspired other young families seeking property ownership and business development opportunity. His home technology projects had included smart home implementation, energy efficiency upgrades, and business improvement that increased property value and community appeal, while showcasing his technical expertise and commitment to property maintenance excellence. The Massachusetts achievements that Derek proudly displayed throughout his home framed automotive industry awards, community recognition certificates from the Framingham Chamber of Commerce, and family accomplishment photographs that documented his progression from employee to business owner. Told the story of a dedicated family man who had earned every opportunity through professional rigor and financial responsibility that demonstrated his worthiness for property ownership and community respect. His automotive business success, community leadership roles in local business associations, and family development recognitions created a comprehensive picture of Massachusetts' achievement that justified his confident approach to family financial planning and community engagement throughout the Framingham area. But what Derek's carefully curated success narrative completely omitted was any acknowledgement of the institutional property support system that had made his homeownership achievements possible throughout his adult life. The private housing development that had covered his down payment through favorable loan terms that most automotive business owners couldn't access, the regulatory coordination that had enabled him to qualify for premium financial terms despite having limited credit history as a young business owner, and the emergency institutional property assistance that had provided stability during unexpected business expenses and seasonal fluctuations, all remained invisible in his personal story of individual achievement and family financial responsibility that he shared with colleagues and neighbors. The lifestyle that Derek maintained in his Framingham neighborhood reflected financial freedom that distinguished him from his professional peers who struggled with mortgage debt exceeding $380,000, worked additional consulting projects to supplement their automotive repair income, and managed tight household budgets to afford Massachusetts suburban living expenses that continued increasing due to property tax assessments and utility costs. Derek's ability to maintain premium home improvements pursue expensive family activities and recreational vehicle purchases, and invest in lifestyle enhancements, without financial pressure, created a comfortable buffer that enabled him to excel professionally, while his colleagues balanced career demands with economic constraints that limited their family activities and property maintenance capability.
Derek's social media presence, which he maintained to network with automotive professionals and document his family progression toward parenthood, featured photographs of home improvement projects, family vacation experiences to New Hampshire and Maine, and professional networking activities that reflected the lifestyle of a successful Massachusetts small business owner rather than a financially struggling automotive repair shop operator. His LinkedIn and Facebook profiles showcased professional achievements, community involvement with local business associations, and family development activities that reinforced his image as a rising star in Massachusetts automotive service leadership and community business development. The professional networking that Derek maintained, membership in automotive trade associations, attendance at industry conferences throughout New England, and participation in community business development organizations, reflected investment in his career development that exceeded what most repair shop owners could afford on their business income alone. His collection of professional development resources, automotive repair reference materials and technical manual, and industry publications represented thousands of dollars in career investment that distinguished his preparation from colleagues who relied on company-provided resources and basic professional development to manage their career advancement and technical expertise development. Derek's approach to community involvement included membership in neighborhood business associations, volunteer activities with local automotive education programs at Framingham High School, and participation in family development programs that required time and financial investment beyond the basic requirements of Massachusetts community citizenship and business ownership responsibility. His additional certifications, continuing education activities through AAC program, and professional networking investments reflected comprehensive family planning that assumed financial stability and freedom from the economic pressures that limited his neighbors' community engagement opportunities and professional development activities. The confidence that Derek displayed in professional and community settings reflected his comfortable assumption that his lifestyle and opportunities were the natural result of his automotive career achievements and financial capabilities, rather than institutional property support that had operated invisibly throughout his adult life. His interactions with automotive repair colleagues, neighborhood business leaders, and community organization members demonstrated the self-assurance of someone who had never experienced serious financial insecurity or questioned the stability of his institutional property support system that enabled his comfortable suburban lifestyle and business ownership success. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of Derek's character was his complete lack of curiosity about the financial mechanisms that supported his comfortable lifestyle throughout his home ownership and business development experience. The private property distributions that arrived without application processes, the regulatory approvals that processed without personal financial management complications, and the emergency institutional property assistance that appeared during unexpected business expenses and equipment failure never prompted questions about the source or sustainability of his housing support system that enabled his comfortable assumptions about property ownership and financial independence. The attitude that Derek had developed toward family relationships reflected his comfortable assumption that his success was entirely self-generated, and that elderly relatives represented obligations that interfered with his professional advancement rather than potential sources of wisdom or connection that could enhance his business development and family planning. His approach to family gatherings, holiday visits, and elderly care responsibilities demonstrated the kind of calculated relationship management that prioritized professional networking and business development over traditional family values and generational respect that honored elderly experience and wisdom. Jennifer Michelle Kowalski-Walsh had constructed an even more elaborate narrative of personal achievement and independent success, presenting herself as a modern Massachusetts working mother who had built her lifestyle through strategic career planning and household management excellence. maintaining perfect work-life balance and family financial coordination that demonstrated her organizational capabilities and professional competence. Her carefully curated professional image emphasized her transition from entry-level administrative assistant at a Worcester insurance firm, successful Framingham household manager while managing pregnancy planning, that demonstrated her capability and organizational expertise in balancing multiple responsibilities and family development goals. The community projects that Jennifer had developed through her involvement with the Framingham Family Resource Center had earned recognition from local publications, volunteer leadership awards, and networking opportunities that positioned her as one of Massachusetts' most promising community development leaders among young families. Her volunteer portfolio included family support fundraising events, community education organizations, and collaborative projects with other young mothers that generated significant community impact and established her reputation as a strategic community professional capable of managing complex partnerships and family relationship coordination throughout the Framingham area. Jennifer's approach to work-life balance during her pregnancy had become a model for other Massachusetts wives in her professional network, with featured recognition in community publications, speaking opportunities at family development conferences, and mentor relationships with younger community members who sought her guidance about balancing career advancement with family responsibilities and pregnancy planning. Her systematic approach to time management and household coordination had earned recognition that extended beyond her immediate professional circle throughout central Massachusetts communities. The household management system that Jennifer had developed for coordinating family schedule, property maintenance, and community involvement reflected sophisticated organizational skills that impressed neighbors, friends, and professional colleagues who struggled to balance similar responsibilities without her apparent efficiency and success in managing multiple priorities simultaneously. Her ability to maintain a pristine home environment, coordinate pregnancy preparation activity, and excel in community leadership created an image of superwoman capabilities that distinguished her from working mothers who made visible compromises between career advancement and family obligations throughout their daily life management. But what made Jennifer's confidence particularly problematic was her systematic dismissal of elderly relatives and her professional assessment of which family relationships deserved her time and attention during this crucial period of family expansion and nursery preparation. The strategic thinking that she applied to family relationship management reflected her comfortable assumption that elderly relatives represented inefficient use of time and emotional energy that could be better invested in career advancement and family development activities that contributed to her professional success and Massachusetts suburban lifestyle maintenance throughout the critical months leading up to their first child's birth. Sometimes the most dangerous assumption you can make about institutional property coordination and private real estate management is that they represent permanent entitlements that continue automatically regardless of character development and family relationship management that demonstrates respect for elderly relatives and traditional family values. The elderly relatives who Jennifer dismissed as time-consuming obligations included the very person whose private property expertise and institutional real estate authority had created every housing opportunity and lifestyle advantage that she considered evidence of her individual achievement and family success in competitive Massachusetts suburban environments that required both professional excellence and character integrity to navigate successfully throughout the property ownership experience. The institutional real estate infrastructure that had operated invisibly throughout Jennifer's comfortable assumptions about her family's property independence would soon become the most visible lesson of her life about the true meaning of private property ownership and the critical importance of treating elderly relatives with the respect and appreciation that their lifetime of professional service and generous support deserved, rather than dismissing them as inconveniences during family expansion activities and lifestyle advancement that prioritized individual achievement over authentic family relationships and traditional values that honored generational wisdom and experience throughout the family property ownership journey. The network of professional relationships and institutional connections that I had cultivated throughout my 38-year career in property development and real estate management represented the most comprehensive housing coordination system ever assembled by a single property professional in New England. Being governmental regulatory bodies, international real estate institutions, federal housing development organizations, and emerging market property agencies across 4 continents, creating a web of influence and authority that could instantly affect the housing stability of thousands of families, while remaining completely invisible to beneficiaries who assumed their comfortable suburban lifestyles were the result of individual achievement, rather than sophisticated institutional property infrastructure that operated seamlessly throughout multiple states and international property development networks. My direct communication protocols with the Department of Housing and Urban Development's Regional Property Oversight Division included daily coordination meetings at 5 weekly strategic planning sessions for national private property policy development that influenced housing regulations throughout New England, and emergency response authorization that enabled me to implement immediate protective measures during market volatility that could affect the housing security of over 2.4 million American families whose private property portfolios depended on the stability and coordination that my technical expertise provided through advanced institutional real estate integration and federal compliance management systems throughout the northeastern United States and selected international property markets. The secure communication channels that connected my NATIC Operations Center to the Federal Housing Administration's Office of Property Development Policy operated through military-grade encrypted satellite networks that processed over 1,000 individual private property transactions daily, coordinating housing distribution between family property systems and federal oversight networks, while maintaining the privacy protections and security protocols that distinguished legitimate institutional real estate management from speculative property activities that could destabilize regional housing markets and compromise national economic security interests throughout the broader property development community. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my federal coordination responsibilities was my role as the primary civilian consultant for the Department of Homeland Security's Property Intelligence Unit, providing technical expertise for private real estate tracking systems that identified potential money laundering activities through property transactions, terrorist financing operations that utilized real estate investments, and international fraud schemes that threatened both individual family housing security and national property stability through sophisticated institutional real estate analysis and pattern recognition algorithms that I had personally developed during my tenure at Boston Properties and refined through decades of federal coordination experience. The international coordination protocols that I maintained with private property regulatory agencies in 34 countries required daily communication with housing oversight officials in London, Frankfurt, Toronto, Sydney, Dublin, Zurich, Amsterdam, and emerging market capitals throughout Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Asia-Pacific regions, ensuring that the institutional real estate movements, coordinated through my family property network, remained compliant with international housing regulations and anti-money laundering requirements that protected both individual beneficiary privacy and cross-border property transparency obligations throughout the global real estate development community. My position as a founding member of the Global Property Development Coordination Council provided direct access to policy development discussions with housing officials from the European Central Housing Authority, Housing Development Bank of Canada, Swiss National Property Administration, United Kingdom Housing Development Authority, Australian Property Development Commission, and property authorities throughout the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation region, enabling me to anticipate regulatory changes that could affect family real estate planning and implement protective strategies that maintained beneficiary housing security during periods of international policy adjustment and market uncertainty that could disrupt property values and housing accessibility. The technical specifications that I had contributed to the International Monetary Fund's Property Development Integration Framework had been adopted by over 97 countries,
as the global standard for institutional real estate regulation and family housing coordination, establishing compliance protocols that balanced individual property rights with governmental oversight responsibilities, while creating the infrastructure foundation that enabled legitimate family institutional real estate management to operate efficiently across international borders and regulatory jurisdictions. Throughout the global property development community, the private consulting contracts that I maintained with major global real estate institutions, including Cushman and Wakefield, Private Property Division, CBRE, Global Housing Services, Jones, Lang LaSalle Property Management, Colliers, International Private Real Estate, Savills, Global Property Coordination, and Kennedy Wilson, International Property Services, provided ongoing technical support for security enhancement projects, regulatory compliance optimization, and family property coordination systems that process over $31.2 billion in monthly institutional real estate transactions, while maintaining the accuracy and transparency standards required by federal oversight agencies and international regulatory coordination protocols throughout the global property development network. My advisory role with the Federal Trade Commission's Division of Property Market Management included quarterly briefings on private real estate market trends that influenced national housing policy, monthly reports on family property coordination patterns that identified potential market manipulation, and immediate notification protocols for any institutional real estate irregularities that could indicate market manipulation, insider trading activities, and property development, or coordinated schemes that threatened the integrity of private property markets and housing security of individual investors and family property beneficiaries throughout the United States and international real estate network. The institutional real estate infrastructure projects that I had supervised for the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation included developing emergency response protocols for private property institution failures that could affect thousands of families, creating property insurance frameworks for family real estate institutions that protected individual investments, and establishing coordination systems that protected family property assets during financial institution crises, while maintaining the stability and confidence that distinguish legitimate institutional real estate from speculative property platforms that posed systemic risks to the broader housing system throughout regional and national property markets. But beyond the governmental and regulatory coordination that occupied significant portions of my professional responsibility throughout the week, the private sector relationships that I had developed throughout the institutional real estate industry provided unparalleled access to market intelligence, technological innovation, and strategic partnerships that enabled me to optimize family property management in ways that exceeded what traditional real estate advisors could achieve through conventional property approaches and standard housing management techniques that lacked sophisticated federal coordination and institutional access. My position on the board of directors for the National Property Development Association, the leading institutional real estate industry advocacy organization representing over 190 major private property companies throughout the United States, provided direct access to policy development discussions, regulatory strategy coordination, and technological advancement, influenced the future direction of private real estate markets and a competitive landscape that determined which housing opportunities provided optimal returns for family property development and long-term housing security planning throughout the National Property Development Network. The venture capital partnerships that I had established with leading institutional investment firms, including Blackstone Property Investment Solutions, KKR Private Real Estate, Apollo Global Property Management, Carlyle Private Property Development, and Bridgewater Property Associates, create exclusive access to early-stage private property projects and institutional real estate technology investments that provided family property beneficiaries with opportunities to participate in housing development before these investments became available to general market participants, ensuring that qualified families maintained competitive advantages in property accumulation and housing independence achievement throughout the regional property development community. My consulting relationship with major institutional property investors, including Vanguard Property Development, Fidelity Private Real Estate Management, Charles Schwab Property Services, and Rowe Price Private Property Services, provided ongoing market analysis and strategic guidance for private property portfolio optimization, enabling family property trusts to coordinate their institutional real estate allocations with institutional investment flows, while maintaining independence and flexibility that distinguished family property management from corporate investment strategies that prioritized institutional returns over individual beneficiary security and long-term family housing stability throughout the competitive property development market. The academic partnerships that I had developed with leading university property development research programs, including MIT's Real Estate Development Initiative, Harvard Business School's Property Management Research Center, Boston University's Family Housing Studies Program, and Northeastern University's Institutional Real Estate Institute, provided access to cutting-edge technological development, regulatory analysis, and market research that enabled family property coordination to incorporate the most advanced institutional real estate innovations and anticipate future private property opportunities before they became widely recognized investment categories throughout the academic and professional property development community. These academic collaborations included guest lectures at executive education programs for property development professional research publications in peer-reviewed private real estate journals that influenced industry best practices, and participation in international conferences that brought together the world's leading institutional real estate technologists, regulatory officials, and private property investors, creating networking opportunities and knowledge exchange that enhanced my ability to provide family property beneficiaries with the most sophisticated institutional real estate management and strategic property planning available in the global private property market throughout multiple jurisdictions and international development networks. The technology companies that had implemented my institutional real estate coordination protocols included major cloud computing providers, cybersecurity firms specializing in property data protection, and real estate software developers whose systems processed the majority of private property transactions worldwide, ensuring that the technical infrastructure supporting family property coordination remained at the forefront of technological innovation while maintaining the security standards, compliance protocols required for legitimate institutional real estate management and federal regulatory approval throughout the global property development community. My patents for private property security algorithms, institutional real estate integration protocol, and family housing coordination systems had been licensed by over 340 technology companies worldwide, generating royalty income that exceeded $2.8 million annually, while establishing technical standards that influenced the development of institutional real estate infrastructure throughout the global private property industry, and created additional revenue streams that enhanced the overall financial strength of family property operations and beneficiary support capabilities throughout the regional property development network. The Donnelly Foundation for Housing Education, which I had established with a $19 million endowment drawn from my property development consultation income, provided scholarships for promising students pursuing institutional real estate studies, research grants for private property security development and public education programs, promoted housing literacy among elderly populations who had been excluded from technological advancement due to age discrimination and inadequate educational resources that failed to address the unique learning needs and security concerns of senior citizens interested in private property investment and institutional real estate management throughout their retirement planning. The Foundation's annual conference, the International Symposium on Family Property Coordination attracted over 1,400 participants from governmental agencies, academic institutions, and private sector organizations throughout North America and selected international property development markets, creating the premier forum for discussing the intersection of institutional real estate technology, family property planning, and regulatory compliance that shaped industry best practices and influenced policy development at both national and international levels of governmental and private sector property coordination throughout the global real estate development community. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my professional network was the informal coordination system that I had developed with other family property managers and institutional real estate professionals who specialized in multi-generational private property planning, creating a confidential consultation network that enabled immediate response to beneficiary emergencies, character assessment challenges, and family crisis situations that required sophisticated intervention and coordinated support from multiple professionals with expertise in both institutional real estate management and family relationship dynamics throughout complex property ownership situations. This informal network included former colleagues from Boston Properties who now managed institutional real estate operations for other major property development institutions throughout New England, regulatory officials who had transitioned to private sector consulting roles after distinguished federal careers, and private property entrepreneurs who had successfully built institutional real estate companies and understood both the technical requirements and family relationship challenges associated with managing significant private property portfolios across multiple generations of beneficiaries with varying levels of technological sophistication and character development throughout their property ownership experience. The monthly coordination meetings that this network conducted through secure video conferencing systems provided opportunities to discuss challenging beneficiary situations that required careful character assessment, share successful intervention strategies that had resolved family property conflicts, and coordinate responses to family emergencies that required immediate housing support, combined with character accountability measures that distinguished temporary assistance from long-term dependent relationships that could undermine beneficiary development and family respect obligations throughout the property ownership and family relationship management experience. My role as the unofficial coordinator for this network reflected both my technical expertise and institutional real estate management, and my successful track record in managing difficult family situations where beneficiaries had developed entitlement attitudes or demonstrated systematic disrespect for elderly relatives whose property coordination made their comfortable lifestyles possible, providing other professionals with proven strategies for implementing accountability measures while maintaining family relationships and achieving positive character development outcomes throughout challenging property ownership and family relationship situations. The case studies that I had documented and shared with this professional network included detailed analysis of intervention techniques that balanced property access with character accountability, character assessment protocols that measured family respect alongside professional achievement, and family healing processes that had successfully transformed entitled beneficiaries into respectable family members who understood both the value of elderly wisdom and their responsibilities as recipients of institutional real estate support, creating a knowledge base that enhanced the effectiveness of family property coordination throughout the private real estate professional community. These intervention strategies had been successfully implemented by network members in over 180 different family situations throughout New England and the broader northeastern region, ranging from minor disrespect issues that required educational intervention to systematic elderly abuse cases required comprehensive property coordination and suspension and intensive character development programs before beneficial relationships could be restored, and institutional real estate support could resume under modified terms that ensured ongoing family respect and elderly appreciation, continued entitlement attitudes, and systematic family dismissal that undermined traditional values and generational respect. The success rate of these intervention programs exceeded, with beneficiaries demonstrating sustained character improvement and family respect and maintenance for periods extending beyond 6 years after intervention completion, validating the effectiveness of coordinated accountability measures and their character development requirements as essential component of responsible family property management and sustainable institutional real estate coordination that served both individual development and broader community benefit through authentic family relationship modeling and elderly respect demonstration throughout the property owner's experience. The international recognition that our network had received from private real estate regulatory agencies, family property management organizations, and academic research institutions reflected the innovative approach that we had developed for combining technical expertise with family relationship education, creating a comprehensive model for responsible institutional real estate management that prioritized character development alongside property planning and established new standards for ethical private property coordination that influenced industry practices and regulatory expectations worldwide throughout the global property development community.
My leadership role in developing these international standards for family institutional real estate coordination had resulted in invitations to serve as an expert witness in federal court cases involving private property disputes that required sophisticated technical analysis, regulatory policy consultant for congressional hearings on institutional real estate regulation that influenced national housing policy, and technical advisor for international treaty negotiations regarding cross-border private property coordination and family asset protection during periods of economic uncertainty and market volatility that could affect international property values and housing accessibility. The congressional testimony that I had provided during House Financial Services Committee hearings on private property regulation had been instrumental in shaping federal policy regarding family institutional real estate protection, elderly housing security, and character assessment requirements for private property beneficiaries, ensuring that regulatory frameworks recognized the importance of family respect obligations and elderly care responsibilities as essential components of legitimate property coordination, rather than optional considerations that could be ignored without consequences throughout the family property ownership and institutional real estate management experience. The regulatory influence that I had achieved through my professional network and technical expertise created opportunities to advocate for policy frameworks that protected elderly private property holders from financial abuse, family manipulation, and systematic dismissal by younger relatives assumed that advanced age indicated technological incompetence, rather than recognizing the professional expertise and property coordination authority that many elderly individuals had developed throughout distinguished careers in real estate, technology, and institutional property management throughout their professional development and career advancement. The White House Economic Council consultation work that I had performed during 2 different presidential administrations included strategic planning for national private property policy that influenced housing accessibility throughout the United States, crisis response coordination during international real estate emergencies that threaten property values and housing stability, and technical guidance for federal agencies implementing new regulatory frameworks that affected family institutional real estate and private property management throughout the United States and international partner countries that required sophisticated coordination and federal oversight. During the 2020 housing market crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, my emergency coordination protocols had been instrumental in maintaining stability for 700 family property trusts and preventing the kind of institutional real estate panic that could have destroyed generational housing wealth for thousands of American families throughout New England and the broader northeastern region. The crisis response systems that I had developed enabled real-time coordination between federal agencies, private property institutions, and international regulatory bodies, ensuring that family property remained protected while maintaining the transparency and accountability standards required for public confidence in private real estate systems throughout the crisis period. The Federal Housing Administration's adoption of my institutional real estate stress testing protocols had become the national standard for evaluating private property institutions' stability during economic uncertainty and market volatility. These protocols had been implemented by housing agents in 34 states and had successfully predicted and prevented institutional real estate failures that could have affected over $190 billion in family property wealth across multiple state jurisdictions and property development markets throughout the United States. My consulting work with the International Monetary Fund included developing emergency response protocols for sovereign debt crises that affected private real estate institutions, creating coordination systems between national governments and private property organizations, and establishing technical standards for cross-border family asset protection during periods of political instability and economic uncertainty that threatened international private real estate operations and family property security throughout global property development market. The World Bank's Property Development Initiative, which I had helped design and implement, provided technical assistance and capacity building for emerging market countries seeking to establish legitimate private real estate sectors and family property management infrastructure that could support economic development and housing stability. The program had successfully helped 27 countries develop regulatory frameworks and institutional capabilities that protected family property assets while maintaining compliance with international anti-money laundering and terrorism financing prevention requirements throughout their property development and housing coordination systems, but perhaps the most significant aspect of my international influence was my role in developing the Basel III Property Banking Accords, which established global standards for private real estate institution capital requirements, risk management protocols, and regulatory oversight procedures that protected both individual family property assets and international housing system stability throughout the global property development community. These accords had been ratified by 89 countries and had become the foundation for modern private real estate regulation worldwide throughout the international property development network. The European Union's adoption of my family property protection directives had created a unified regulatory framework that enabled private real estate institutions to operate across national borders while maintaining the highest standards of client protection and regulatory compliance throughout the European property development market. These directives had been particularly important in preventing the kind of private property tax evasion and money laundering scandals that had previously undermined public confidence in institutional real estate systems throughout European markets and international property development network. My role as a senior advisor to the Financial Stability Board included developing early warning systems for systemic risks that could affect private real estate institutions throughout the global property development community, creating coordination protocols between national regulatory agencies that ensured consistent oversight and compliance standards, and establishing technical standards for information sharing that protected both individual privacy rights and collective housing system security throughout the global private real estate community and international property development networks. Sometimes the most powerful aspect of professional network development is the ability to coordinate immediate responses to family crisis situations while maintaining the confidentiality and privacy protections that distinguish legitimate intervention from public embarrassment or family humiliation that could damage relationships permanently, then creating opportunities for character growth and authentic family healing that strengthened relationships and improved respect patterns for long-term family benefit and community modeling throughout the property ownership and family relationship. The network coordination protocols that I had developed for responding to character assessment situations ensured that intervention measures were proportional to the severity of disrespect issues, focused on education rather than punishment, and designed to create sustainable behavior change rather than temporary compliance that would revert to problematic patterns when oversight pressure was removed or accountability measures were discontinued after insufficient character development and family respect establishment throughout the property ownership and family relationship management experience. The comprehensive nature of my professional network and the sophisticated coordination systems that connected governmental agencies, private sector organizations, academic institutions, and international regulatory bodies created an infrastructure foundation that enabled immediate response to beneficiary character issues while maintaining the professional standards and ethical obligations that distinguished responsible family property management from arbitrary financial control or manipulative family dynamics that could damage relationships and undermine trust, rather than creating opportunities for growth, learning, and authentic relationship improvement based on mutual respect and shared family values throughout the property ownership experience. Derek and Jennifer's comfortable assumptions about their property independence and lifestyle security were built on a foundation of institutional real estate coordination and professional relationships that extended far beyond their comprehension or appreciation throughout their homeownership. The seamless private property services that they had always taken for granted represented the culmination of decades of professional development, international cooperation, and technical innovation that required exactly the kind of expertise and authority that they had systematically dismissed as irrelevant to their modern Massachusetts suburban lifestyle and professional advancement strategies throughout their family planning and property ownership experience. Institutional real estate empire that had operated invisibly throughout their comfortable assumptions about property ownership entitlement would soon become the most visible demonstration of professional authority and family accountability that the Massachusetts private real estate community ever witnessed, proving that respect for elderly relatives isn't optional courtesy, it's the foundation for continued access to the sophisticated housing infrastructure that makes suburban lifestyles possible in competitive environments that require both professional excellence and character integrity to navigate successfully throughout the property ownership and family relationship experience that determines long-term housing security and authentic family prosperity. November 15, 2024, began as what should have been a routine return from my monthly coordination meeting with federal oversight officials at the Massachusetts Real Estate Investment Council in downtown Boston, a simple homecoming that would expose the true character of the son whose comfortable suburban lifestyle I had been secretly funding for 7 years and trigger the most comprehensive demonstration of institutional real estate authority that the New England property development community had ever witnessed. The drive from my federal coordination meeting to Derek and Jennifer's Framingham home took exactly 47 minutes through the scenic Route 9 neighborhoods, whose zoning regulations helped establish during my years coordinating regional private property policy with Massachusetts State Housing Authority. My arrival at the Colonial House at 3:30 p.m. was precisely on schedule for the family dinner planning that Jennifer had mentioned during our phone conversation the previous Wednesday. When I opened the front door using my access key at 3:32 p.m., carrying fresh flowers and looking forward to our family weekend together, I expected the usual warm greeting that had characterized our weekend traditions for over 6 years. Instead, what I encountered would become the defining moment that revealed Derek's true character and triggered the most expensive lesson about family respect and elderly appreciation that any small business owner had ever received in Massachusetts institutional real estate history. Derek appeared in the main foyer with an expression of calculated efficiency that immediately indicated something fundamental had changed in his approach to our family weekend tradition. His expensive work clothes contrasted with the typical comfortable family clothing he usually wore during our relaxed weekend gathering. The immediate tension in his demeanor and the conspicuous presence of nursery planning materials and baby furniture boxes positioned throughout the living spaces suggested that my arrival was being perceived through a different lens than the traditional family visit we had maintained for years. "Oh, hi, Mom," Derek said with the kind of professional efficiency he typically reserved for difficult customer conversations, rather than family interactions. Perfect timing. I have something really practical to show you that I think you're going to understand completely. We've made some incredible space optimization improvements to the house that really maximize the functionality and create so much more efficiency for our growing family needs and nursery preparation requirements. The statement about incredible space optimization improvements represented the first indication that Derek had been making unilateral property decisions without family consultation, revealing his comfortable approach to family communication management that prioritized convenience and family expansion over traditional family decision-making processes and elderly inclusion responsibility. That sounds very thoughtful, Derek, I replied while maintaining the pleasant family tone that had always characterized our interactions and setting down the fresh flowers. I'd love to see what improvements you've been working on. What specific changes have you made that you're excited to show me? The confident expression that crossed Derek's face revealed his immediate anticipation of presenting what he considered a successful family solution that demonstrated his problem-solving capabilities and space optimization expertise during this crucial period of nursery preparation. Well, Derek announced with professional presentation enthusiasm, we've completely converted your bedroom into the most amazing nursery and baby preparation center that you've ever seen. It's absolutely perfect for the baby mom. We installed a crib, changing station, baby monitoring equipment, and nursery coordination solutions that create so much more functionality than that space was providing before for basic guest accommodation. It's like having a boutique baby care center right in our home. The phrase converted your bedroom represented the first indication of Derek's systematic space appropriation strategy, revealing his fundamental approach to family property management that treated my personal accommodation as underutilized real estate, requiring family optimization rather than family living space deserving protection and respect. His enthusiastic description of the nursery installations demonstrated months of strategic planning and financial investment in permanent alterations that eliminated my bedroom accommodation without consultation. But the most devastating moment in our conversation came when Derek delivered specific explanation that would become the documented evidence of character priorities that justified implementing the most comprehensive institutional real estate ownership reconsideration in Massachusetts property history. The truth is, Derek said with confident dismissal that reflected months of strategic thinking about elderly accommodation management, we've set up a really comfortable arrangement for you in the converted garage, since you're just taking up space we need for the nursery, and we can't maintain accommodations that aren't being used efficiently when we have immediate family development requirements that affect our daily nursery preparation functionality. The phrase "since you're just taking up space we need for the nursery" represented the exact moment when Derek's systematic elder dismissal transformed from strategic family space management into documented evidence of character priorities that violated every provision of the Donnelly-Walsh Family Property Trust's beneficiary conduct requirements and family respect standards. His comfortable assertion that my bedroom accommodation wasn't being used efficiently revealed the complete extent of his elderly marginalization strategy and his fundamental disregard for traditional family values and elderly accommodation. Derek's casual gesture toward the back of the property showed me that the former two-car garage had indeed been converted into what appeared to be a small living space. The 16 by 20 concrete structure, originally designed for vehicle storage and workshop activities, now featured a small space heater, basic electrical extension cords running from the main house, and minimal furnishing visible through the single window that had been installed in the garage door. I think you'll find it quite cozy and practical, Jennifer added, appearing from the kitchen with professional enthusiasm that characterized her community organization presentations. We've made it really efficient with everything you could possibly need for basic accommodation. There's a small bed, a basic table, and we even installed that space heater so you'll be comfortable during your visits. It's really quite charming, like a little cottage retreat where you can have complete privacy and quiet time without disturbing our baby preparation activity. As I stood in the foyer of the house that I owned through my institutional real estate trust, listening to my son and his pregnant wife explain why my bedroom had been converted into their nursery, because I was just taking up space we need for the nursery, and I should be grateful for a converted garage arrangement, I experienced the devastating reality of elderly dismissal and family space appropriation that would justify implementing institutional real estate ownership consequences and trust reconsideration protocol. I understand your position completely, Derek and Jennifer, I replied with the kind of professional composure I had developed during 38 years of managing institutional real estate crises and trust administration challenges. Thank you for clarifying your approach to family accommodation and elderly space allocation. I appreciate your honesty about the family priorities that guided this decision, and I'll make sure to adjust my planning and expectations accordingly going forward. The relief that appeared on both their faces revealed their comfortable assumption that elderly relatives would accept space appropriation without consequences that might affect the family's lifestyle arrangements and financial stability. Their professional confidence in their strategic communication had convinced them that elderly relationship management could be optimized through efficient conversation without considering the potential implications for continued trust support and institutional real estate ownership benefits. I'm so glad you understand, Mom, Jennifer continued with renewed enthusiasm about their family development achievement. I was hoping you'd appreciate the creative solution we found for maximizing our space utilization. The professional photographer is coming next Thursday to document the nursery installation for our family portfolio and social media presence, and we're planning to feature it in our upcoming collaboration with Framingham Family Magazine. The revelation that Jennifer planned to profit professionally from appropriating my bedroom space, featuring the conversion in their family portfolio and magazine collaboration, represented the final evidence of character assessment that would determine their family's continued eligibility for institutional real estate support and property security. Her comfortable assumption that she could leverage family space appropriation for professional advancement revealed her systematic approach to elderly relationship management that treated family obligations as business opportunities rather than responsibility. The evening of November 15th, as I sat in my modest apartment while Derek and Jennifer enjoyed their optimized family space in the house, whose ownership and financial coordination I controlled, I began accessing the comprehensive institutional real estate management systems that would transform their comfortable assumptions about property ownership entitlement into the most expensive lesson about elderly respect and family appreciation that any Massachusetts family had ever received. At 9:45 p.m., I initiated the first phase of what would become the most comprehensive beneficiary review in Massachusetts institutional real estate history by accessing the Donnelly-Walsh Family Property Trust's quantum encrypted database systems and implementing private property ownership assessment status for Derek Michael Walsh's institutional real estate accounts. The administrative classification that I applied indicated potential beneficiary conduct violations, requiring comprehensive character evaluation throughout the regional private property management network. The beneficiary assessment protocols that I activated included comprehensive coordination that affected Derek's mortgage verification systems, property tax documentation, homeowner's insurance record, and equity access eligibility that determined his continued property ownership and residential planning security. The systematic nature of the classification modifications ensured that every platform and system connected to his homeownership expectations experienced coordinated changes that created immediate complications for his residential planning and long-term consequences for his family's housing security. By 11:15 p.m., the first automated notifications had been generated by trust systems that detected beneficiary irregularities affecting Derek's institutional real estate status and private property coordination assessment. The alert protocols that I had implemented included federal notification
requirements that triggered immediate evaluation of private property distribution eligibility and housing coordination assessment that could affect his family's property planning calculations based on character evaluation standards and family respect verification protocols. The first immediate impact of my institutional real estate modifications became apparent when Derek attempted to access their monthly private property coordination system at 7:20 a.m. on November 17, and discovered that their institutional real estate accounts had been classified as under beneficiary review character assessment by the Massachusetts Regional Private Property Authority. The panic that followed his discovery revealed the extent to which his family's housing stability and comfortable lifestyle depended on institutional real estate distributions and trust coordination that he had never understood or appreciated. The panicked phone call that I received came from Derek at 8:35 a.m., with obvious desperation and confusion about the administrative complications affecting his institutional real estate access and family property planning.
Mom,
Something terrible is happening with our property accounts and housing coordination, he announced with professional emergency language that revealed his immediate understanding of catastrophic housing implications. Our institutional real estate distributions have been suspended, and the federal authority is requesting documentation about beneficiary conduct evaluation and family respect verification that we don't understand. The Worcester County Property Authority is requesting immediate documentation about our institutional real estate status and character assessment verification. Derek continued with growing panic about the implications for his family's housing security and property stability plan. This is affecting our property standing and potentially compromising our equity access, with programs that require verified ownership, backing and accurate housing positioning. By the end of the first week, the comprehensive nature of Derek and Jennifer's institutional real estate classification complications had generated legal consultation fees exceeding $67,000, administrative documentation requirements that consumed over 140 hours of their professional time, and housing standing complications that required extensive verification procedures and potential lifestyle restructuring based on property status uncertainty and trust administration challenge. The most shocking revelation came on December 8, when Derek discovered the true ownership structure of their Framingham colonial through legal documentation required for the institutional real estate status verification process. The property records that his attorney obtained revealed that the house where they had lived for 7 years was owned by Donnelly-Walsh Property Holdings, with Margaret Elizabeth Donnelly-Walsh listed as the primary managing member and decision-making authority for all property-related matters. The moment of recognition that Derek experienced when he realized that the elderly woman whose bedroom he had converted into a nursery was actually the legal owner of their house represented the most devastating character assessment revelation in Massachusetts institutional real estate history. His systematic elderly dismissal and family space appropriation hadn't just violated family respect obligations, they had been directed toward the very person whose private property ownership authority determined his family's continued housing security and lifestyle maintenance. When Derek called me on December 10 with genuine terror in his voice and desperate confusion about the institutional real estate ownership revelations affecting his family's housing security, something remarkable began to happen that would transform this story from simple private property administration into a profound lesson about family values and elderly respect. Mom, I think I've made the most terrible mistake of my life, Derek said during our emotional conversation that would mark the beginning of his character transformation. I was so focused on optimizing our nursery preparation space and advancing our family development that I completely lost sight of what really matters: respect for elderly relatives, appreciation for family tradition, and understanding that family success means nothing if you achieve it by excluding and dismissing the people who support and care about your family's well-being. The genuine remorse that Derek expressed during our conversation represented the first authentic character development he had demonstrated since establishing his systematic approach to elderly relationship management. His recognition that nursery optimization without family respect was meaningless success revealed the kind of character growth that distinguished deserving property support from permanent institutional real estate privilege suspension. Rather than simply resuming their private property coordination, I proposed something that would serve both character development and community benefit, while creating opportunities for authentic family healing and meaningful housing responsibility. I created the Property Development Community Responsibility Program that would operate for 24, providing housing literacy education and institutional real estate coordination for elderly community members, while requiring their direct participation in elderly housing services under my supervision as program coordinator. The Property Development Community Responsibility Program would require Derek and Jennifer to work alongside experienced housing literacy specialists, community development workers, and elderly service professionals who understood the value of traditional wisdom and generational respect, while providing essential institutional real estate education to underserved elderly populations throughout Worcester County and the greater Massachusetts region. The transformation that began during the first month of the program exceeded even my own expectations for what community service could accomplish when combined with character accountability and elderly recognition. Derek's initial reluctance to participate in hands-on elderly housing work gradually evolved into genuine appreciation for the seniors we served and understanding of the administrative expertise required for effective institutional real estate coordination and family property management. The elderly community members who worked alongside Derek and Jennifer included retired property professionals, former housing administrators, and institutional real estate professionals whose lifetime of service and professional expertise provided daily examples of the elderly wisdom and community contribution that they had dismissed during their systematic family relationship, restructuring and nursery preparation optimization strategy.
Mr. Robert Kowalski, an 84-year-old retired housing development manager, who had spent 46 years developing institutional real estate programs for major Massachusetts property institutions, became particularly influential in helping Derek understand the connection between family respect and community responsibility. "Young man," he told Derek during their 12th week of working together, "I've seen thousands of families over the years, and I can tell you that the most successful communities always start with families that understand how to honor their elderly members and learn from generational wisdom rather than dismissing us as obstacles to overcome." The 24 months of program operation created measurable community impact that included coordinating institutional real estate education for over 200 elderly community members, providing housing literacy training to creating ongoing support networks that continued serving seniors long after the formal program concluded. The success of the program attracted attention from institutional real estate administrators throughout Massachusetts and established a model for family-based community service that honored both elderly needs and intergenerational collaboration. But perhaps the most significant transformation was the change in Derek and Jennifer's understanding of family relationships and the value of elderly wisdom in creating meaningful community contribution. Their systematic elderly dismissal and family expansion optimization strategies were replaced by genuine appreciation for my institutional real estate expertise and recognition of how family respect and community service could create personal satisfaction and family fulfillment that exceeded anything achievable through competitive family advancement and strategic elderly management. 5 years later, Derek's transformation had become a model for family-based community service throughout Massachusetts, with his story featured in community development publications and institutional real estate administration journals as an example of how private property intervention could create family healing and authentic elderly appreciation. His work coordinating the annual Massachusetts Family Property Responsibility Network, which operated in 43 communities throughout the state, provided ongoing opportunities for meaningful contribution while maintaining the family relationships and elderly respect that he had learned through his housing service experience. The beautiful home in Concord where Derek, Jennifer, and their 2 children now lived purchased through their own legitimate financing after demonstrating sustained character development and family respect, provided comfortable family living while supporting their elderly advocacy work. The elegant but modest home reflected their understanding that true satisfaction came from authentic relationships and community contribution, rather than competitive family positioning and systematic elderly dismissal. Jennifer's current position as Community Housing Advocacy Director at Massachusetts Department, Elder Affairs, earning $94,000 annually while coordinating elderly institutional real estate programs and family housing education throughout the region, provided meaningful professional work that honored both her organizational expertise and her commitment to community service and family values. As I write this final chapter from my beautiful oceanfront home in Scituate, Massachusetts, purchased with proceeds from my institutional real estate consultation work, I'm surrounded by family photographs that document our journey toward authentic relationships and mutual respect, professional commendations that honor my career achievement, and community recognition that celebrates the property development community responsibility program's ongoing impact throughout the Massachusetts region. The son who told me I could live in the garage because I was just taking up space we need for the nursery discovered that respect for elder relatives isn't optional accommodation, it's the foundation for institutional real estate eligibility and private property coordination that determines whether families build meaningful legacies or destroy opportunities through systematic dismissal of generational wisdom and traditional value. The bedroom that had been converted into a nursery became the foundation for a community housing program that served hundreds of elderly residents, while teaching Derek and Jennifer about the critical importance of elderly respect and family loyalty. The systematic family expansion strategy had been used to appropriate elderly living space was transformed into community service that demonstrated how institutional real estate administration and family healing could create opportunities for authentic contribution and meaningful personal satisfaction. Remember, institutional real estate ownership and private property coordination aren't guaranteed family privileges. They're earned recognition of demonstrated character and elderly respect that creates foundation for housing credibility and authentic community contribution. Accommodation that disappeared from personal housing and became community service requirements taught Derek and Jennifer about the true meaning of private property administration and the critical importance of honoring the elderly wisdom that distinguished lasting housing responsibility from a superficial lifestyle presentation and systematic elderly dismissal. Sometimes the most valuable lesson you can teach ungrateful family members is that property privilege isn't automatic entitlement, it's earned recognition that continues only when families demonstrate appropriate respect for elderly wisdom and traditional values that create the foundation for authentic community service and meaningful institutional real estate administration. The private property coordination that had protected their comfortable lifestyle became the foundation for their transformation into community servants who understood that true success comes from serving others while honoring the elderly relatives whose lifetime of expertise and service created every opportunity for authentic contribution and family legacy development. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.